Hi, and welcome to the 11th Busiversary. My name is Dan Handelman. I'm with Flying Focus Video Collective, and this program marks 11 years since we started doing this show, a half-hour weekly program, the Flying Focus Video Bus, in November of 1991. And we've been together ever since. And what we are doing with this program is coming out in front of the camera, so you at home can see what we look like and who's putting on all these shows about social justice issues every week. And we want you to realize that we're just ordinary people who pick up camcorders and go out and tape stuff, and you can do it too. So we'll have some information up throughout the show about how you can get in touch with us if you want to join us, and hopefully some information about some of the groups who put on some of these events that we taped all around Portland area and around the world, in fact. And we hope that you will enjoy it, and thank you for joining us for Flying Focus's 11th Busiversary. I produced 5 programs with Flying Focus between 2001 and 2002, and one of the ones that I did was regarding the annual Hiroshima Day event that's held down at Waterfront Park every year by the Physicians for Social Responsibility and several other organizations. And one of the things that was really moving about this particular year's event is people were saying, never again, we never again want to see something like the horrendous things that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in between the time that I videotaped this and the time I put it on TV, September 11th happened. So it was sort of an interesting contrast to say, we don't want to ever see this kind of violence ever again, and then it happened almost right after. But some of that is addressed sort of precognitively, almost, by the people that you'll see talking here.
I'll take that chair. These 2 chairs are for you here.
Large-scale warfare began about 10,000 years ago with the advent of agriculture. And 3,500 years ago, we developed bronze weapons and armor. 2,200 years ago, iron weapons and armor. And for the first time, 1,900 years ago, horses were used in warfare. Since then, we've developed guns, cannons, submarines, jet fighters, and ultimately nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction. There have been 500 wars since 1700, and 250 wars in the 20th century. 90% of casualties in the last 300 years in warfare have been over the last 100 years.
4 weeks ago today, I was in Hiroshima. And when I'm here today thinking about that experience, one of the things that I remember is standing on the bridge that was the intended target for the bomb. It was a bridge right in the center of town, just like our Burnside Bridge. And if a bomb were to fall on Portland, it would be right here. Another thing that I remember is the people that I met there, the Japanese, one survivor and another resident of Hiroshima, who talked to me about the bombing and their feelings about it, and who took me around the Peace Park and the Peace Museum. And what I remember that they told me was not of their anger and resentment, but that the strongest feeling they have is that this should never happen again, and that's why we're all here today.
This next program is called Remembering Genoa, and it is about the protest that happened in July of 2001 in Genoa, Italy. It was against the G8, a global economic summit for the most rich countries in the world, that was being protested by thousands and thousands and thousands of people from all over the world. And 3 people from the Pacific Northwest, 2 of them from Portland, gave a presentation in October or early November, I guess, 2001, after they had come back, and they described a lot of things that happened there. This is the protest during which one of the protesters was actually shot by the Italian police. And there was all sorts of mayhem, and the police raided a school where people were staying. The police raided the Indie Media Center, the independent media center that was there, that was set up for the people who were demonstrating. And these were supposed to be safe houses, and instead the police came in and wreaked a lot of havoc. So the folks who went there had a good message, an uplifting message that, together with solidarity, we can overcome these kinds of things, but it was also kind of scary.
The Italian government suspended the Schengen Accords, which is basically the EU's open border treaty. And several hundreds of known anti-globalization protesters were blacklisted who were arrested previously and have records. They're prevented from getting into the country. There are controls inside the country frequently as well, and locals who were living in Genoa, who were living actually inside the red zone, which is, again, just the whole downtown area, had their IDs checked every time they went in. They had to go through massive security checks going in and out of their homes and of their neighborhoods.
We would get lots of calls from all kinds of people, and people would be reporting things that weren't truly going on anywhere, and it was a pretty chaotic situation. And then I got a phone call that and someone said, someone's just been shot. And it wasn't the first time that we had gotten phone calls saying that guns had been fired. And I found out later that, in fact, the police had fired into the air earlier. But something about this person's call, I knew that he was telling the truth. And then many calls started pouring in, which definitely confirmed that.
People in groups who had been at each other's throats almost literally leading up to the actions over pretty abstract political issues came together, lived in the same spaces, ate together, and worked really hard trying to get our friends out of jail and trying to keep people from getting tortured anymore. So all of us who were there in Genoa, I think, feel a pretty intense bond, and I think we also feel a lot of love for everybody around the world who did what they could to show us and to show the Italian state that in this movement we're never truly alone, and there's never anything we truly have to face alone, even when we're in solitary confinement.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Goodwin-Grayzel, and I taped and edited the 5th annual Homelessness Marathon, which was a national radio broadcast from here in Portland, Oregon. There were advocates for the homeless as well as the homeless themselves speaking on an open mic, and I went down to check it out because, like most complex issues, there are no simple answers to this one.
Goes without saying, it is the simple truth that homeless people are a very diverse mix. Brian, are there any people you've ever had who came into Street Roots who you thought stood out as being particularly unlikely, people that were less like the stereotype of homelessness than anybody would have imagined and who stand out?
Well, I think my experience at Street Roots has primarily been that it has completely decimated any stereotypes that I may have had, and so I no longer view people as, oh, well, gee, I would never expect that from this person or that person. Everyone has their own story and their own circumstances that have put them on the streets, and I'm not surprised anymore.
When I became homeless, it was really scary. It's a really lonely, frightening thing to happen to a person, and I just like to speak about a place called Dignity Village that I found. Ever since I found this place, they've given me a safe place to stay, a place where I can keep my clothes, and also they have a telephone there, which I use to go through the yellow pages and find myself a job.
Tell people what Dignity Village is.
Dignity Village is a village for the homeless here in Portland, Oregon.
The most important thing that people can do is take a very honest look at homelessness and the things that perpetuate poverty and perpetuate people being on the street, and decide which direction we need to go. Do we want to try to rehabilitate people and help them get off the street, or do we want to criminalize people and just keep socking them away in jails? That obviously is not the answer. That approach has been tried in cities. Seattle and San Francisco are good examples.
Portland's going to start talking about doing that too.
Portland's trying to do it as well, and anybody who's been to San Francisco knows that that approach is not working.
Without Dignity Village, I think that I would have just ended up turning back to drugs and alcohol and not trying to pick up the pieces of my life.
'Cause someone might ask you for some help tonight. Someone might, ask you for some help tonight. Oh, that's alright. Oh, that's alright. Oh, that's alright.
Just 1 minute. He's the king of...
Rosie, who couldn't be with us tonight, did a program about poverty, which was called The Politics of Welfare, and it features a talk by Cherry Hankala, which was given at a conference on poverty, and there was a number of speakers. The whole thing was organized by several people, including Heather Hafner, who also has been volunteering with Flying Focus this year. So you should listen very carefully. Cherry Hankala has been working on the ground with people to try to change the way that people in Pennsylvania deal with poverty, and it has ramifications all over the country.
And more as I travel across this country, I believe that the answer to changing the conditions that we face in this country really is about seeing. That we don't believe that if the news media had been there at 2 o'clock in the morning that night, that they would have tolerated that happening to these families. That if the majority of us saw what was happening in the states, both the rural and the cities across this country, we as people in this country wouldn't tolerate for a minute. But the problem is that we are being made to disappear, and we are consciously being kept from seeing the reality of what's taking place in this country. Yes, people are being removed from the welfare rolls, all right, but they're definitely not leaving poverty. They too are being left in these inhumane conditions. Here in Oregon, right? You've been to workshops all day. You know that here you folks lead the country in hunger, and that 88%, there's been an 88% increase in the housing cost. And in '99, over 2,000 families, including children, were turned away from being able to access city shelters here. And in the South, if we go to some place like North Carolina, I can take you to a huge section of town in which over 100,000 people don't have something as basic as running water.
It's PC and Barb, and I'm PC, and this is Barb, and Peri and Greene. Let's tell them about Street Roots. How did that go?
Street Roots, that went great. This was a chapbook party for members of Street Roots, which is the local paper run for and by people who are homeless or have been homeless. And in this program, we have a few words of wisdom from Reverend Michael Parker, and then Sherry Asbury and Israel Bayer reading their poetry. And while Israel's reading his, in the background you'll see slides by Byron Pollard.
No, I think this is
Brian
the one.
Pollard.
Brian Pollard, that's right. This is the one that was taped by Orion and Desmond.
Right.
They did a good job.
Yeah, and let's take a look.
I got to tell you, I've heard a few poets in my day. I've been up there with brother Amiri Baraka, with fast-speaking woman Sister Ann Waldman. I've heard Rabbi Allen Ginsberg say his piece, and I got to tell you, I get the same feeling tonight that I get from them. This is going to be a special night for us all.
Little Kenny, with the crooked legs, sleeps out in the cold. The only possessions Kenny has are in the bags and bits he hasn't sold. His mama died birthing him. His father hated Kenny from that day. He beat the boy and crippled him when he tried to go out and play. Kenny's mind became a jumbled mess, with his thinking going round and round. Sometimes he forgets, does Kenny, that he's sleeping on the ground. His hand held out for spare change, Kenny wanders the callous streets, quietly learning to live with his fate that is drowned by his many defeats.
As neighborhoods filled with skyscrapers and museum caryatids, gutter punks panhandling alongside nighttime girls, business thugs rising with the dawn, high heel rush, as crushing Interstate 5 just bleeds along. Car horns, red light alibis, traffic reports getting by, people moving with the moon, forgetting the smog, walking the streets, moving their feet, hanging with the cripples, keeping the beat. We got homeless people sleeping out on the street. and the city'll swallow you up as the rain brings you down. Avenues of muffled love and sin, alleys of madness, highways carrying gladness, parks, fountains, walkabouts, realness and fallacy. This is the city. The city is our home.
That last program about street roots was about economic injustice here in the United States. And this next one coming up is about the Jubilee, which is about economic injustice outside of the United States, to my mind.
Global economic injustice, and a beautiful segue. I like that. Let's see, so part of that was talking about the economic injustice of colonization that's taking place by the North over the South.
Right.
The southern regions
Which has really
of
never stopped.
below the equator.
Right.
People from Africa, U.S., gosh, I'm trying to remember what southern parts of the world. Speaking about how they were being treated by the G8. Right.
The way these debts were contracted in itself was illegitimate, because they even went into contract with people who did not represent the nations when they contracted debts with the dictators, when they know very well those loans were used especially in military activities and capital flight. Is that really therefore credit worth? And that's why I say both creditors and debtors must take responsibility in these issues and this question. And the issue of cancelling debt is just but an entry point to lead us to continue investigating and analyzing and getting to know the historical process, like we are saying, and find out where is the legitimacy, because we are operating within their framework. The framework which we are saying is affecting and has a bad backlash on people. It's killing people. So let us revert and use our own human economics, where it means life comes first.
It's the form of the debt it strikes me, if I understand it correctly, is illegitimate, because there's a double standard or a different way of dealing. When these same institutions deal with capitalist enterprises, these are limited liability corporations, and they can go bankrupt. Right. But the office holders, they don't lose their homes, they don't lose everything. Precisely. But the same standard is not applied to the countries that incur debt and it goes bad. It's simply international power that is used to turn this into a form of debt servitude. But that's not even the capitalism that they practice in the first world. This is another relationship. This is a sharecropping arrangement.
And you taped that last program with
Susan Bloom.
Susan Bloom.
Big help. Couldn't have done it without her.
Great.
Thank you.
And the one coming up is also about Africa, about women working for peace in Sierra Leone.
Right.
Some people that you trained went to Africa, to Sierra Leone, and interviewed people there, right?
Actually outside Sierra Leone, just outside where the refugee camps were. And that was taped by a young man by the name of Kaylee. And let's see, what did they do? Went to the refugee camps, taped the women talking about what they were going to do as alternative means to the political injustice and the cultural injustice.
You think these guys are interested in really coming to help the country? No. The rebels are fighting to gain control or to remain in control of diamond areas, diamond mining areas. What do they mine the diamonds for? To pay their bills. What bills? Food bills? Medication or medicine bills? No. Bills for weapons, ammunition, guns. The Cold War had finished. We had all this stockpile of ammunition and weapons in the outside world. How do we dispose of them? There's a bunch of people out there. They have all these resources. We could use this. In fact, get it out to them. They can pay us money for this. So this is what the war is about in Sierra Leone.
the war has been a very sad thing to me and all the people who have been around me, especially my family. Back home, you know, every morning, like when the phone rings, you know, I usually get really panic to take the phone because I know on the other end there will be bad news for me. But as you can tell from the movie, I talked about my sister, you know, daughter who was taken by the rebels for about 4 weeks. But she is now doing okay, but she's really, really not getting over what the experience she has with the rebels, and she is really terrified.
The more you think about the past, the more you get frustrated. Therein, the trauma will never leave you. But when you are engaged in something else, doing something, then you will tend to forget because all your attention will be based on whatever you are doing.
This next video is about women working for peace again. This time it's women from Afghanistan and Europe talking about the details of what?
This is about cross-cultural understanding, and actually it's a woman from Iran and a woman from Germany who both have a lot of experience in workshops helping people to bridge their differences and even just to see their differences. And it's in a workshop, in a teach-in, a day of workshops that was sponsored by Portland Peaceful Response Coalition after the bombings of Afghanistan started.
When you have a power, let me give you a personal example. If you talk about anti-war, I lived through a war in Iran. I am anti-war. Nothing can change my mind. Nothing. Because, not just here, intellectual belief, I've seen people suffering. I've seen what war brings to people. I've seen people body. I've smelled their body. I've seen the neighbor burn me. I've seen the result of war in a nation, not just in Iran, in Iraq, and even worse in Iraq. I've seen the misery that war brings. So beside my, say, intellectual belief and idea, which is part of also, also our emotion, I am against war, regardless, but I don't have a luxury, as you do have a luxury, probably, to say it that out loud. You know why? These days, I would say it anyway. But what happens, the first thing that it comes, I am responsible to answer, what about bin Laden? If we don't bomb these people, what are we going to do? Maybe I don't have answers. But the even more violent step is that some people assume that, so it's okay with me, or with us, what happened in September 11th. What association, what a violent association, what an invasion of identity and belief of people. So the question is that you have even though you as a peace advocate or people who are curious to know how we can process a peace, or you're curious to create a dialogue, in a dominant culture, you don't probably associate, you will be a little bit outcasting compared to mainstream, but what we go through is far beyond the imagination. So you have a power.
So I guess I've been with Flying Focus for 7 years now, and this is the first year that I haven't done any programs about animal rights, because it's animal abuse issues that got me into this to begin with. But as you can see, there's plenty of other issues that need to be covered. So,
well, I'm glad to have had you here because you've made a very nice impact and changed our ways of thinking, and we needed that. It seems like I've done less actual taping this year and more coaching, but I can't really tell that if that's true or not. It feels that way. So don't forget the number on the screen. Call in if you have any questions. This is part 1. Tune in for part 2.
Next week.
And see you then.